Leslie. You're listening to ToRAISE Questions Doula podcast. I'm sitting here with Thérèse Hakoun, the executive director of ToLabor, which is a certifying and training doula organization, international. Thérèse, you're just amazing. You really are.
Lovely.
You are. And we've been sitting here for about an hour and a half already.
I know. I sometimes think, so Melanie and I, hello everyone, Melanie and I come into the studio to record, and we're always on a time crunch. But today we seem not to be talking about our time crunch, even though we have one.
We're on one, yeah.
But we end up chatting. And so many times, though, we're talking stuff that you guys would just really like to hear, that we should be just recording. But other stuff people don't need to hear. Right. Anyway, it's nice to be here again with you and everyone else.
Yes. Thanks for listening, everybody. We also really appreciate these donations that are coming in.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And we want to give a shout out today to Chloe Lieberman from Asheville, North Carolina. Beautiful city, too. Mm-hmm. And Chloe's organization is Homegrown Babies in Asheville. Yep. You're doing really cool work, Chloe.
Yeah. So thank you, and check them out. If you're in the area, just check them out. And we just want to remind you to donate when you can. We'd really appreciate it. So the question that we received is actually from Danielle Grant. Hello, Danielle.
Hi, Danielle.
She is, in her letter to us, she says she hasn't made a decision to become a doula yet. She's listening to the podcast to get a sense of what the work is all about, which I think is really, really wise. But she had a question, which is this. I will just read what she wrote. I've heard from people it's better to be cut by a doctor during birth, episiotomy, than allow yourself to stretch and tear because the vagina will heal better. Is that true? So I think we have a feeling about this question. I think it's interesting. I don't know if Danielle, you wrote this in this way from your own perspective, or this actually has been said to you, but your words that says then to allow yourself to stretch and tear. It's that allow yourself to stretch that I really want to focus in on as such a key part of not tearing.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And allow yourself to stretch. That's what your body was made to do.
Exactly. And here's the history. Episiotomies were, I think currently, episiotomies are at about approximately 40%, or it's supposed to be less. I read somewhere 25% of births, but at another time I read 40%. So let's just say 25 to 40% of births in this country are still having episiotomies. At one time, back in before 1991, they were almost 100%. It was like, those of you who are listening, ask your moms, did they have an episiotomy? And the chances are good that they did. Ask your grandmothers if they had an episiotomy. They probably said yes. I don't know, honestly, off the top of my head. We could research it real quick. When did episiotomies become the norm? My guesstimate is that it's been, the last 50 to 70 years, just because, like when I was being born, I have very little doubt that episiotomies were done on my mom with her children, just because they were knocked out, they were drugged,
right.
They used forceps on them, they did, they were just handled. And an episiotomy would be one more thing a care provider would do.
Just part of the process.
Yes, it's just part of the process. And honestly, what happened was, at a certain point, the belief was from the medical model and from the physicians, was that to do an episiotomy was actually helping to preserve the perineum, that they did see people tear, and that they felt like, well, we can control that.
Right.
And so let's cut. And so episiotomy became the norm for everyone.
Do you think it had anything to do as well with the difficulty of repairing?
Probably. Oh, yes. I have no doubt that did, you mean the difficulty
For the physician?
Yeah. That it took more time to piece back together. Absolutely, I think that has to be part of it. Bleeding might have been part of it. They're thinking also the recovery for the woman, that the pain of it, the residual effects of it. But so that's when they thought, we can control it. We'll cut. We'll keep that a straight incision.
Well, and I say this because we just talked about this, but I was just at a birth a couple of days ago, and the woman did get an episiotomy, and it was actually the first episiotomy that I've ever seen, and it was necessary. We had been pushing for 5 hours. Baby's heart rate went down. It was a third try with the vacuum. It was C-section. Let's get this baby out. So I was surprised to see it. I knew that it was necessary. But what really surprised me was how quick that repair was, because I'm so used to seeing the midwife or the doctor really take their time stitching the mom back up after she's torn herself.
Right.
And this doc was in and out. And I was like, what? You're already done? Wow. That was so fast.
Yeah, because if it goes well, it's just a straight shot.
Yeah.
And it's a looping stitch that they do. And yes, it's done. So there is definite bias, I will use that word, on the care provider's part to want to do something that is more efficient from their perspective as far as their time and their ability. But by 1991, ACOG, the organization who issues these policy statements and, ways to practice, said that from the studies that had been done, that to do episiotomies actually caused more harm to the perineal muscle than allowing a woman to tear. So it was stated then, quit doing episiotomies on a regular basis. Well, it's kind of the proof of what's been said, that it takes approximately 16 years for practices to actually come into fruition, to be normal. When they issue a bulletin, it usually takes about that long for it to just then become the status quo. So it was a slow process of people not receiving episiotomies regularly. It had to be a new training, new people coming in and not being taught to do that regularly.
Right. And there are still physicians practicing that it is their normal policy, normal protocol.
But what's interesting is that the lowest rates of episiotomies historically in the country is in teaching hospitals, because they're not teaching them.
Because it's evidence-based. Right.
And, it's supposed to be evidence-based. Some teaching hospitals still aren't. We're fortunate to have one that is. So they discourage the use of episiotomies, but what's in the highest incidence of episiotomies are in private practices. So, but what that makes me think is, well, they were once a resident.
Right.
And they weren't doing it. So why do they go into private?
Changed?
Yeah, and I can't answer that. I think it's a question we have to ask, though. Why, if you weren't trained to do, why, if that wasn't the norm, why is it now your norm? And part of it is age. Hopefully we'll see with the newer docs that they don't do them as often, and that it's just the ones that was their norm that was doing it. But that doesn't always play out in the physicians that I know of in the community that we're at, or from other parts of the country. But so to answer the question, is it better? I think Melanie gave an answer. Gave an example of when an episiotomy may be medically necessary. It is not very common for an episiotomy to ever be medically necessary. It could be necessary in the minds of the care provider, but that doesn't mean it's medically necessary. I want to be really clear on the difference in that statement. A time when an episiotomy seems to be medically necessary is an example what you were giving. The baby was sitting on the perineum, or I will use it as an example as well that I just shared with Melanie before, that I was at a home birth and the baby was crowning, and it was a first-time mom, and she was doing great, and it was that nice stretching that was occurring. It was, stretch, little pushes, trying to help her not tear. And baby was doing fine, sitting on the perineum, crowning like that, and a little more, and doing really beautiful stretching to the point where it felt like the baby would, in a contraction or a few more, would just slide on out their head. And that wasn't happening. And then the baby's heart rate went way down and was not coming back up in between contractions. The pressure on the baby's head was obviously getting to be too much. And so at that point, it was like, who cares if you tear, which was the whole point of the nice stretching and giving time. Just burst your baby out. Just push with all your might. And so this mama was pushing with all her might. She's unmedicated, with all her might to try and get this baby born, moving her in a different position to give her more impetus for that pushing sensation, which she had. Baby would not burst through that perineum, and the heart rate was staying down at about 60. And finally, the decision was made just to give a quick snip, and an episiotomy, a very small, thankfully, incision, and the baby slid on out, and baby was totally fine. But her perineal muscle, just for whatever reason, would not give, which is not very common.
Right.
It is not very common.
When I've been to births where the crowning stage takes hours.
Hours?
Hours.
Hours? I'm
Yes.
sorry. Let's say it again.
Hours. Yeah. I had one birth that baby was literally crowning for close to 2 hours. And the heart rate was perfect. It was fine. And so she just had a really tight band around her perineum. And she did not get an episiotomy. Stretched.
And were they oiling, greasing?
Everything. Yep.
Gentle
With the midwife
massaging?
in the hospital. And she was able to really rest and relax in between the pushing contractions, and just.
So was it a gradual crowning?
Very, very gradual.
Okay, gradual. I'm picturing baby sitting on the perineum for 2 hours.
No, baby was definitely. I mean, I'm showing Therese how much head. You guys can all see this. I mean, baby was staying under pubic bone for that long. It was just her perineum, but the heart rate was perfect. And so I later asked the midwife, like, was that really hard? Was that hard for you to wait? And she said, if that heart rate had gone down, we would have done something differently, but it was perfect.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really, I've not had that experience or seen that. So I think it probably would be very rare, given most care providers would never allow that to happen. But the point being that it was the heart rate, the baby was dictating the care, which was good, which is really, we often say the baby will tell us. It's the baby who will tell us. It's not, sometimes it's the mama who's saying, I'm done. And other times it's the baby that is saying, I'm done, even if the mama says, I'm not. It's like the baby has to make the decision. And in this case, the baby was making the decision that it was okay. So episiotomy versus the tear, which is better? What has been shown is that an episiotomy, when you cut it, it is not uncommon that once it's cut, I mean, just imagine, or do it while you're listening, snip a piece of paper or a piece of material that's near you. And now that you snipped it, pull it and see what happens. And more than likely what will happen is it will continue to tear down deeper into the cut that you made on that paper or material. So it is not uncommon for a woman to receive an episiotomy, which might be considered a second degree, first degree, second degree. But the truth is, I read many a long time ago, combining two things there, that the definition of an episiotomy is a second degree tear, because you're cutting into tissue and muscle, so therefore it's a second degree tear. So you already receive a second degree tear by being cut. And then as your baby, you're pressing hard, and in a lot of those cases, they're not telling you to push slow or helping you control it. It's more like push, 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 and you're bursting your baby out then, and that cut often goes deeper. And sometimes it goes right down into the rectal muscle and will tear into the rectal muscle. That is a hugely different experience for a woman that, had she not been cut, may not have occurred. When it tears down, no matter what, cuts down your cut, it's cutting muscle. And muscle is a different healing process than tissue. Most tears, not all, but most tears are tissue. They're not muscle related. And it's like any time we get a cut, if you just cut your skin and it doesn't go into the muscle, you can probably hold it together, or if you need to, get stitches, and it heals really well. And you would never know that you even had. And your skin, we're so amazing, our bodies, the healing process. But once you cut into muscle, it just changes the ability for that muscle to grow back and adhere well. So what happens to a lot of women, and I've watched this so many times, not all times, but so many times with women, they've had an episiotomy at their previous birth. They then are birthing their second time, and they don't want an episiotomy again, so that they've chosen the right care provider. They are being guided really well on how to gently push their babies out, and they do, quote unquote, a magnificent job of pushing their babies out, very gentle, letting the baby just virtually slide on out, and it open up just like a zipper again. And it's because the integrity of the scar line is just not as good as if it had been stitched back together from a
natural tear.
It's kind of like when cesareans used to be done, they were done the vertical scar. And they knew that the reason VBACs, vaginal births afterwards, were more dangerous was the integrity of the scar was not as good when it was vertical. So here we are with a vertical scar on a woman that could open like a rupture again. They're afraid of the rupture, and here we're doing it on somebody and it could rupture open again. And what they do also is they tie it really tight, which is really offensive when it is done tight and then actually said. And those who are listening have heard this themselves. Other people who are listening have heard stories of this being said. I've heard it. We're going to tie you up we're going to stitch you really nice and tight, so it'll be like you didn't even have a baby before. And they usually smile over at the partner, and it has been called the husband stitch. It was just a normal thing that they would say.
In my mouth.
I know. And what happens is when that baby is trying, as gentle as it is, it's trying to push its way through, it just opens up that scar tissue again, and it because it was so tight, it wasn't the natural stretching that could occur. The only way it could come through was to burst it open. And so they end up with another tear again. I mean, they end up torn, but it's down their episiotomy scar line. A tear line, on the other hand, is not always muscle, as I already mentioned, but it isn't straight.
It's jagged.
It's jagged. It's like if you hold your hands in front of you, fit your palms facing you with your fingers open, and then weave your fingers in together. I don't know if I'm explaining this right. And then try and pull it apart. Try and pull your fingers apart. That's what a scar from a natural tear is more likely to be like. It's hard to pull it apart. Some women will tear again, but you won't see them tear on their tear exactly.
Right.
Because it's just not going to happen. They might tear, but they may tear in a different location, or they may never tear again. I'm an example of that when I had my first baby in the hospital, I had a doctor who we discussed episiotomies, and he was one of the rare ones. This was 1980. Who was like, nope, you don't want one? That's fine. I won't do one. I was like, great. Well, I didn't know enough then, and he certainly didn't do anything to help me. I burst her out. Like I felt her crown, and it was like, boom, just pushed her out, and I tore. So I tore, which was unpleasant. I got stitched. I mean, I didn't feel myself tear. I got stitched up. Recovery from it is uncomfortable. But you know what I've never known, and I'm going to go back to that story, but what I never knew was it the stitches that was uncomfortable, or was it, see, this was 1980. They shaved pubic hairs at that time, and I felt like what was really uncomfortable were the pubic hairs growing back in during that time, more than the stitches. But anyway, I had the tear, which I don't think was too terribly bad, and I healed, and I had 5 more babies and never tore again, because there was a difference in the quality of care that was given to me
during pushing.
So I think to answer your question best, Danielle, is, and it goes back to your thing that I already pointed out about allow yourself to stretch, and take out the second to the next part of it, which says and tear. It's allow yourself to stretch, and maybe you'll tear. But it's not a matter of you get an episiotomy or you tear, because not everybody tears. And I just gave myself as an example. With your babies, what happened, if you don't mind? I don't remember.
Yeah, my first baby, also born in a hospital. We were a transfer from a birthing center at 9 centimeters because of D cells, and got an epidural, a really heavy epidural, and could not feel anything to push. And the doctor said, okay, we're going to use forceps. Your baby's right here. First, I'm going to cut a little episiotomy. And my husband, we had taken the Bradley method class, and my husband's like, wait, a natural tear will heal so much better than an incision. It goes through much less layers of skin and tissue and muscle, and just
love Peter.
Bust this out. And the doctor looked at me and said, a forceps delivery with no episiotomy. Really? And I was like, can we try? And we tried. And I did tear a tiny bit. I had kind of what they call, I love this term, skid marks.
Yes.
And so, I'm not sure if I did need stitches or not. I don't think I even needed a stitch. But
if there's skid marks, usually you don't have to have them.
No, I didn't. I don't think I had stitches. And it still hurt so badly. I remember just kind of
stingy,
really stingy. I remember kind of crying, thinking of lifting one leg over to get into the bathtub. And then I never tore again after.
Yeah.
But I mean, forceps.
Yeah.
And no stitches.
Yeah. You probably, what you were feeling, the pain, was the forceps. And those skid marks, it's the reason for the perineal, the peribottle, or peeing in the toilet. In the toilet.
Tub. Right.
Pee in the toilet. What a novel idea. Yeah. Peeing in the tub or shower. Just because it's that stingy. It's the ammonia hitting your open, it's like and for those who don't know what skid marks, what we're talking about, it's like running and you fall down and you scrape your knee. It doesn't, there's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't need stitches. It just is an abrasion that occurs. It's an abrasion and it's open skin, but it's not enough to warrant any kind of stitches. And that's what sometimes the inside can be like internally for the woman like you, and many other, where there's nothing you can do about it as far as stitching goes, but there are comfort measures we can do to make it feel better. One of the things about stitches, though, or non-stitches, is the flip side of it is seeing it as, okay, what's the positive here? It keeps you down, or it should keep you down. Like if you have stitches, whether it's from an episiotomy or a tear, you should be doing very little after you have that because you don't want it to open up again. You want to keep it as intact as possible. So if you just had a baby, that's what you want to be doing anyway. Sometimes it forces people to be like, okay, you can't be going up and down the stairs 3 times, 5 times, 6 times a day.
Right.
If you're going to go downstairs and stay downstairs all day.
It forces people to be gentle with themselves.
Yeah. Which they should be doing anyway. But how do we prevent a tear is really the important thing. And part of that, there's so many different ways. One of which, and do you talk about this in your childbirth classes, perineal massage?
Yes.
Okay, so you give input about that.
Well, I used to not talk about it, and I used to think, it's not really a big deal. And then a little study came out saying, oh, it actually is, and it really can help. At 37 weeks, doing some perineal massage with yourself, with your partner, a couple of times a week. Now, I've had students and clients come back to me and say, we do perineal massage every night for 45 minutes. And I'm like,
And they use a lubricant of some kind.
Yeah, olive oil, vitamin E oil, lube, coconut oil, whatever.
Non-scented,
absolutely. And I tell them, you know what? It's not the best feeling. It feels like pressure in your butt. But have some fun and have some sex afterwards.
Yeah. And part of it is not just stretching that muscle and getting used to it. It's getting used to that uncomfortable feeling.
Yes, paying attention to a part of your body that you don't pay attention to.
Because you're going to feel that sensation of that pain, that stretching in your butt, and that's what a lot of people who do it like about it. Like I was just talking to a woman 2 weekends ago, and she was saying it was the best thing she did because it really put her in touch with what she was going to be feeling. And she said, and I related to it when I was giving birth. It was like, oh, I know this feeling. Yes. And it didn't scare her, it didn't make her back away from it because she was so familiar with it. And other people, it is too uncomfortable. They don't like it. And then I say, well, don't force it. It's not the only thing that helps prevent tearing. It's a good suggestion. It is something that could really be beneficial to some. And for others, it's like, no, don't want to. And some people, whether it doesn't matter, they're just not comfortable with that, doing it themselves, like touching themselves, or they feel like it's too weird to ask their partner to do that because it isn't sexual. Like, you're going to stick your fingers in my vagina and, rub around, they don't want to do that. But that is something to definitely consider.
Well, and with my own clients, we do have a conversation prenatally. I think, you and I were talking about this earlier, but a tight, really strong perineal muscle is, we see that more in athletes.
Right. And dancers and horseback riders,
runners, Pilates, yoga, anything that is keeping your core really tight and firm. And you don't realize it, but you're really using your perineal muscle to help with that. So that's something that I ask my clients ahead of time. And I'm just adding running onto my list now of things to ask people. How often do you run? How long have you been running? But so then with those clients, I definitely encourage them to do the perineal massage.
Yeah. And, we have that episode back probably 10 episodes. So I'm guessing around 55 or so with Lynn Schulte about pelvic floor muscles and such. And so you can take a listen to that. And we kind of discuss this. And going to that kind of segueing, controversial about Kegels or no Kegels, but it's always been said that Kegels is a good way to help you have less likelihood to tear if it has some strength to it.
I'm doing them right now.
Yeah, good. I always think that I probably shouldn't have gotten rid of my license plate that said Kegel. Yes.
Well, so for me, it sounds counterintuitive.
Right.
To do Kegels during a pregnancy because that strengthens the perineal muscle. So,
right. I know, because what like I'm reading something right now. It says this exercise offers the benefit of strengthening the muscle, but also teaching how to relax it too. So that's the purpose. It's like when you do the crunch, you have to let go though too.
Okay.
It's the letting go that I think is the point. So I'm not saying this is one of those things that, we used to believe Kegel. I still believe very strongly in Kegels, but I do have a better understanding of how it could be counterproductive in certain people. And I think in a person who's already an athlete, Kegels is not the answer.
Right.
But to somebody who is more sedentary in their life, it could be that Kegels will help them strengthen the muscle enough and help them learn how to relax. But they don't. I just think Kegels should be done after you have a baby, period.
Yes.
Another one that we all know is perineal lubrication during the labor itself, during the crowning, pushing stage, that having some kind of oil or even the KY that they use to lubricate the inside of the birth canal, inside the vagina.
I'm just going to have to say, preferably not Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that, which is just crazy.
It is.
So something oil-like, and Melanie gave you a tip about, carrying your own.
Little individual packets of olive oil.
Yeah, so check out one of our episodes that has that tip in there. That can help. What I hate to see, I just want to, and I have no control over this, is when the care provider has heard that stretching the perineum is a good thing that can help during the crowning in order not to, to help the baby ease out and prevent tearing. But they don't understand that doesn't mean that their fingers are in there constantly around the baby's head, stretching that perineum, like with the deep fingers, and then pulling back the perineal muscle. I'm doing all of this as we're talking.
Yes, and my face looks totally horrified.
Over the baby's head. That is counterproductive. That is, in essence, swelling the tissue eventually more than it is stretching. Some of that, a little bit of lube here, and here, feel it here and around and everything. But it's more, the method should be more greasing the passage, like really just making it really, so those abrasions, there is less risk for friction. So having your clients talk to their care providers about that, you reminding during that period of time, like, oh, is this something you want to discuss with them again, or request it, having that available maybe yourself, like the suggestion of carrying some olive oil with you. The other one that we love are warm compresses, helping somebody feel that warmth and that gentle counter pressure on their perineum as the baby is head is crowning is magnificent. And I can just speak from my own birth experiences that it just felt like, oh, thank God.
Yes.
You know, it's just that moment of, oh God, thank you.
Yeah.
Like you relax when you feel that warmth and you feel that counter pressure. It's like something else is pressing up against that and makes you feel like, okay.
And it helps you focus on where to direct your energy.
Because also I think, you know, that head is just sitting there. And yet if somebody just puts their hand gently there, it's like, oh, it's not just hanging out. It feels like, oh, something's supporting it. I don't have to burst it. You just want to get it out of you. But if your hand is somebody's hands there, it makes you feel like, oh, okay, they've got it. The main thing we found, and I've watched this for years and years and years, it's the helping someone, you know, we're focused on push, and we want them in many cases exactly to do that they have to push really hard to get their babies down under that bone, get it to the perineal skin. But as soon as that baby starts into that crowning, then that forceful pushing should be taken back like a step. And then it's more like, okay, you're stretching beautifully. It's choice of words too. Yes. Beautiful. Okay, a little push, beautiful. Okay, blow. Okay, stretching. A little more. Okay, a little push there. Good. Okay, good. Now blow. All of those things.
I like sometimes saying, just give me a little grunt.
Yeah.
So instead of even a push, just give a little grunt, because with a grunt you push a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest. That is how we help women tear less than any other method, I think, is that directed pushing at the end. Everybody's so anti-directed pushing. That's a whole nother topic. Directed pushing at the end is what preserves a perineum most of the time. And another one is, this just should be normal, but it isn't in hospitals, is encouraging, helping the mom access the top of the baby's head herself. Yes. And feeling their hand there. And again, I can speak to this. My last daughter, Ocean, I had my hand right there on her head and I didn't move it. And so when I pushed, it was like, it's so different to push when you feel your baby's head in your hand. You just don't burst your baby out.
Yes.
And I wanted to burst her out, but at that moment, it wasn't that feeling. It was like letting her just come into my hand. And that can really be helpful. Now, some women were like, oh, I don't want to do that. Or I can't. But you can encourage them to try and say, it's okay, you can keep your hand there as long as they feel like they're still supported, like physically, that they wouldn't fall over. That can be great. The position that they push in as well. One of the worst...
I think it's Sheila Kitzinger who said, give your perineum room to move. So figuring out a position that the perineum is not static.
Yeah.
It's not just... but on the bed.
Right, because here's, this says, in a study where women had no anesthesia, if they were lying in a supine position, they had the highest rates of episiotomies. And women with epidurals had the highest episiotomy rates, 65.2%. Women who had no anesthesia had the highest rates of intact perineums. The position, like side lying, even if she has an epidural, having a woman push on her side with an epidural is going to decrease that risk of the episiotomy or that tearing from occurring.
That's great.
Yeah. And there should be
it's such an underused position to push into.
I know. Yeah. I think it's it sounds, if you're not going to be on a stool or in a real upright position because you're not able to or you're not feeling it, then get on your side. I don't know why. I do know why. I think I know why. Providers don't do it. It's because they don't do it. Not because it opens you just as wide. it is less likely, I always felt that before I ever read it, that you're going to tear.
Mm-hmm.
You can see your baby coming.
Mm-hmm.
You can get that baby easier to your chest to me, it's just like, I think it's because that leg doesn't fit in that other stirrup. I think that's it. You know, it's like they're so practiced in the stirrups that, well, here's how you're the other stirrup. You're helping that person hold their leg.
Mm-hmm.
Hands and knees is good for not tearing. The worst, again, is the supine position, just laying on your back, and especially if you have an epidural. You're more inclined to have an episiotomy anyway with an epidural, because I think care providers think, well, she can't feel it anyway. The woman often can't push as effectively, and often it requires instrumental delivery. And though not all instrumental deliveries need to have an episiotomy, most practitioners just routinely do those.
Right.
So in the end, I also will say this is not scientific. It's anecdotal. I don't have the evidence behind this. I just have the anecdote, which is then, I just want to point out again, research is created by anecdotes. Mm-hmm. It takes a bunch of stories to make them go, well, let's research that. So I think anecdotes actually have a science behind them.
I love that.
Anecdotally, the women who have had an episiotomy and then consequently tear at a different time will tell you they much prefer to have torn than have an episiotomy. There is just a difference in the way the scar heals, they felt like, and it was so much less uncomfortable. So
I also feel like there's some power in there. Someone else doing something to you versus your body making space for your baby. That's a big difference.
You mean the provider is in control.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to find something also that said, I'm sorry, talk for a second. It was something about episiotomies being, I think, the most, so here's something I'm just reading to you right now. With an episiotomy, the connective tissue, muscle, and skin are cut. Therefore, the strength will permanently be compromised. I mean, that's what I was talking about when they do that.
The integrity of the scar.
Yeah, and that there's always the risk of an extension to a third or fourth degree tear, subsequent pelvic floor dysfunction and sphincter dysfunction, painful sex, infection, and fecal and urinary incontinence are all been associated with episiotomies. But it was something about it's the most, I think, I can't find what I was going to read to you, but it is the most common procedure done in obstetrics is episiotomy.
Wow.
Yeah. Of all the things that they do, that is the most common intervention that they do. But we also know there are care providers who rarely do an episiotomy.
Right.
So,
and it's really important to know your providers, or telling your clients to make sure they know their providers' statistics. So a lot of clients will just look at the C-section rate and not pay attention to the episiotomy rate. But if they've got a 45% C-section rate and then a 30% episiotomy rate, then someone's getting cut.
Right.
One way or the other.
Yes, it's one of those things. We're fortunate here in Virginia where though they're older now, the statistics, which we're hoping they'll be updated soon, where we can show like that Dr. X will have a 12% episiotomy rate. And then you look at Dr. Y, who also, both of them happen to be females, and Dr. Y has a 40%. And you think, really, is Dr. Y so incompetent that she doesn't do, what happens to all those poor women that she doesn't cut, that Dr. Y is so able to do such a better job? I mean, it depends on the perspective that people have. So bottom line comes down to, it is probably better to allow someone to naturally tear than it is to have an episiotomy, because not everybody will tear, but once you get an episiotomy, it's a done deal. You have been cut and you potentially will tear more. The big question out there is, and this is a hard one because I'm not a primary care provider, is when you are with a woman who the care provider says, you know what, you're going to tear up. And if we just release a little here of the pressure from below, you're not going to tear up. And what they're talking up is, meaning right up and potentially up into the clitoris. And you have to help your client know if this is a good idea or not. And I can't make that judgment for them because I don't know. Maybe they will tear up, or maybe that's just what the care provider always says. And that's their way of getting the person to agree to an episiotomy. I don't know. That's where it goes back to knowing who your care provider is. Would they do that? Would they sneak that in that way? Do you trust that they really are giving you the true answer that you would tear up? And, the few women I know who have had the tear up say it's miserable. So maybe they would have preferred the episiotomy, but maybe it would have then torn down into their rectum. So I don't know.
Well, and that's a hard one for me because I've heard that from clients before, really specifically from partners before, saying, well, our doctor said that the only time that they would do an episiotomy was if it looked like she were about to tear really badly. And my thing is, how do they know?
I know.
How do they know? Because I've been at the perineum plenty of times and thinking, how is this baby going to get out? And then boom, the baby comes out.
Right.
So how do they know?
I think that's a really good question, Melanie. It's like, is it totally subjective?
Right.
Is it based on experience? So I think a client, and this is something you can say to your clients, this is something you, Melanie, can bring up in childbirth classes, is ask the care provider, well, how do you know? What is it and they might bring it up prenatally, like, well, when would you consider doing an episiotomy medically necessary? And if the care provider says, well, if it looks like you're going to tear, I'd rather cut you. Well, first, why? Why is an episiotomy better than the tear? So what I tear?
Right.
That's the biggest question right there. I mean, to say to the partner, well, so what if she tears? You're asking, she may not tear.
So this whole conversation can fuel that discussion.
Exactly.
You've got all of the benefits now of why a natural tear will heal so much better than an incision. It comes back down to, how do you have a crystal ball? What is the evidence here right now that says that you are seeing that she's going to tear? And if she tears, what difference does it make? Because you're going to cut her, and the cut is then a tear. So what's the difference here? What's the difference?
But see, people don't think that's critical thinking. They're not thinking that it's like, I trust my doctor, and I want you to trust your doctor. I've said that. So last things, if somebody has a tear or they have stitches, we'll just say stitches, they're dissolvable. They will disappear. Keeping activity down as low as possible after you have your baby for that. Taking sitz baths or baths that can feel really good on it. Some people really like to put on witch hazel pads on it, or witch hazel, so that you can freeze. Some people do this for hemorrhoids and for stitches. You take sanitary pads prior to being in labor, and you soak them in, or you can do this anytime, soak them in witch hazel, and then you freeze them. and they feel really good on your bottom.
We call them padsicles.
Padsicles, good. You can take an herbal bath. There are certain herbs that really help, like comfrey and rosemary and yarrow and calendula, and make a tea out of it and use that. Put it in a peri bottle and, squirt it on there. For skid marks, this is something I might have already brought up. It's nori seaweed, and soaking literally the stuff that you buy to make sushi with, taking a strip of it and soaking it, and then squeezing the peri bottle, flushing off anything, and then applying the seaweed right onto internally in your vagina on that tear or that area of skid marks or anything, that tenderness, and allowing it just to stay in there. It will dissolve. It will also come out the next time you go pee, and you reapply it, and it's healing. It binds the tissue back together again, and it's releasing all these really healthy minerals for you. So that might have been a good thing for you with your first baby. I thought of that. And don't be poking around down there to look at your stitches.
Yep.
Which is something.
That's a big one.
Yeah, women will go, well, I was looking at I had the mirror, and I go, put the mirror away.
Put the mirror away.
And keep your fingers out of it right now. It's just let it heal itself. So I hope that answers some questions. I hope it helps you.
Danielle.
Yep, Danielle, who asked the question, and anyone else. And we love your feedback, as always. Just post it on the Facebook page when we post it. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for our tip in just a second. Okay, so our tip today is something that I have been doing the last couple of my clients when we get to transition. In the place of the I can't do this phase and give me something. What I will do is very simply and just straightforward, very directly say, we have a process here. There are steps we need to take first before going to an epidural or going to something that, you have your heart set on right now. There are steps, and we need to go through all of these steps, and then we'll reevaluate. And I've had such great feedback from my clients saying that they heard that and really thought, okay, let me just get rid of all these steps. Let me just do them all. Let me do them all. And then they find that they're ready to push, and then they push their baby out. So the steps we'll go through is any position we haven't tried yet, and then I'll make up something. And then the tub, and then if we're in a hospital that has nitrous. And one thing that one hospital just recently did is nitrous while they're in the tub, and they're able to do that because of the nitrous machine being in close proximity to where the tub is in the room, rather than having the tub in a separate room or a separate bathroom.
But of course, not everyone has access to nitrous oxide.
Right, but making there just be some steps. And so think about that in your own practice. What are some steps that you would take with your clients in transition to pull them through it? Is affirmations a piece? What have you talked about with your clients ahead of time? What do they think they will really need in labor when they get to that hard spot? And so that's when you reintroduce it. But it was just something about having them think that logistically about these steps to go through.
It gave them a direction.
Yeah.
Now, what if they finish all those steps?
So then that's the thing. So just like the other day when I had a woman, we finished all the steps, and we needed something. And she was so thankful that we went through those steps first, so she has no regrets about getting the epidural.
That's good.
At the end. And she even said to me at one point, "Why are you pushing me?" I thought, oh shit, am I pushing her too far? But she thanked me after
for pushing
her.
Yeah.
And so we didn't just go straight to what she was asking for, and she really has no regrets now.
That's good. So you pushed her past that point that she thought she could go.
And
for a while, a while she did. And for some women, they'll go all the way then to the, the unmedicated birth. And for others, it will just give them time, more time, and then they'll be even that much more clear in the postpartum that it was the right choice for them.
Exactly.
Because I think that's part of the goal it's not, you're pushing her because you know that in the postpartum she's going to question.
Exactly.
And she doesn't know that because right at the moment, all she wants is to be out of it. But at that later, she's going to say, well, why didn't we
try this?
Yeah.
What if we had tried that?
Yeah. Or I heard I could have, and you can be the reminder, what we did try this and we did do that. And you did go really far. And then it came to a place where it was crystal clear. You're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good, Melanie. I like that. Thank you, everyone. Bye now.